Welcome back, everyone. We are having another exciting panel, this time about modern data strategy for decentralized value creation. Decentralized data strategy. Those are the two key words here. Components, capabilities, and tools. Maybe we can get a little bit into the tech, but I think we need to start by defining things. I have some good guests with me. Let's start off by introducing everybody. Go ahead.
Head of Data and AI at Thoughtworks in Finland.
Okay.
Yes, my name is Henrik Nielsen. I'm a principal sales engineer in Snowflake, responsible for data architecture across the Nordics with our strategic accounts.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Michael Moulsdale. I'm a product manager at Alation, and I'm responsible for our AI initiatives.
All right. Modern data strategy. Seems to me like having a data strategy overall is something we've been talking about for many years. And what I'm hearing about is having an AI strategy now and developing that. Is there such a thing as a modern data strategy in light of these developments, or is it still the same thing?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're talking about modern data versus AI, from our perspective, you cannot have AI without data, right? Data is like the biggest foundation for actually doing proper AI. And you need to get your data foundation in a good shape first, right? And that's why the modern data strategy for us is an underpinning for the AI as well.
Is there something that's different about the way we approach our data strategy now in light of these new developments in generative AI and AI in general? What do you think?
Well, I think it's not so much about the developments around generative AI or the AI in general. I think how we see at Thoughtworks the modern data strategy forming is around kind of a decentralization and getting rid of really heavy data teams that are usually becoming the bottlenecks.
Okay. So, but then, right, because I didn't have much to say on the decentralization part. What does that mean when you say decentralization?
Well, basically, in short, it's about giving the ownership of the data to the teams and groups that actually produce the data and know the most about the data. So it's much more of sort of an organizational concept from our point of view than a technological concept.
Right.
Of course, you need the technology to support that sort of a decentralization, and I guess the guys here might have some ideas around that.
Yeah. Well, are you seeing decentralized data governance in the same way?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think when we look at more of a federated model, certainly you want to have a mix. So you want to have an organizational strategy on what is our overall approach to governance, both AI and data. But you want to have that federated model so that you can decentralize or outsource some of that to the areas where there's areas of expertise, while still allowing data scientists to have that fluidity, being able to create their creative selves, but working within a framework that they know they're not going to break any regulations. And we're seeing a ton of regulations coming through, so making sure they're aware of those.
Okay, like in a decentralized environment, I've seen it implemented in a number of ways in terms of the division of responsibility of more traditional IT stuff, like splitting, for example, compliance with checking that data types are good and that kind of stuff. So when we have a decentralized setup, how much ownership should go to business and business units?
I think that
what are the key things?
That depends a lot on the maturity of the different business units. So you see, with my interaction with our customers, we see a lot of different levels of data literacy between different customers. So we see a mix between complete decentralization, but still with a federated model. So federation means that you're still keeping some kind of control centralized, but the actual ownership is decentralized. But we also see customers that don't have that level of maturity out of the business unit, so you need to have a central team to still to be able to help with the actual technical implementation and the control of things. So it depends, right? It depends on the level of maturity of the different companies.
And I think that the sort of the role of technology here is to sort of enable those teams to actually support. So it's you need that enabling factor there.
Because it is primarily organizational, right? As you
Yeah.
mentioned before, it's like how do you make sure that your organization is mature to actually be able to do this? One of the things I've seen a lot is that it's many times it starts with if you look at the C-level, you know, how engaged is the CEO and the CFO and the data strategy or working with data? Do they have a CDO, like Chief Data Officer? If you don't have that, then you can also see problems going down. So it starts at the top and then goes down. That's
Okay, so but like in a mature federated environment, what parts still benefit from being centralized? What do you think?
Well, what we usually see that ends up being centralized is actually the kind of a data catalog part,
Okay.
because it's you need to have that one place where you find your data product, for example, and how they connect to each other and so on. So there are some parts which are like naturally.
But then we're just talking about like
centralized.
infrastructure serving, not necessarily meta level stuff, right? I mean, that IT is providing a data catalog, but the contents of the catalog are still managed by the business units and sort.
Yeah,
Am I right, or what do you?
kind of
What do you
the data product owners or the domains that own the data, they should be the ones who actually, fill in the information. Do you have any views
Yeah,
on this?
I'd go one step further from that. So I think if you're talking about the technical metadata, that's going to come from centralized or decentralized technical teams that are looking after those source data sets. But when you're talking about describing or classifying those specific data, it's not the data engineers that are doing that. It's going to be SMEs that are largely going to be at the business level. And therefore, you do want to be federating out the ability for those to be able to curate those data.
Okay.
And some of the things that I would keep centralized are things like ensuring that security is in place.
Yeah.
As you say, compliance, especially in very heavily regulated industries like pharma and financial services. And then the actual auditing of what is going on
Yeah.
the technical platform, regardless of which platform it is, right? That's things you should still have as a central responsibility.
Yeah.
And what we see again, that kind of federated model within the catalog context is what customers are saying to us is, we want to have a standard set of policies and tags and glossaries and terms that they have across the entire estate, but then decentralize maybe the idiosyncrasies that matter to a certain business unit, but making sure we have a standard language across the whole estate.
Yeah, we see these, let's say, security, compliance type of things, also the catalog services as a capabilities that the sort of a central data platform team has to provide for the organization and for the domain teams so that they can actually do their stuff and stay within some confined box in a way that it's not like a Wild West.
Is it a coincidence that I haven't heard in this entire long conversation the word data mesh being mentioned?
It's kind of underpinning everything, right? It's become a bit of a buzzword.
Yeah.
I think I like actually when I have a lot of data mesh discussions with customers, like several times a day. But I like to turn it around to more data products that we're talking about. The outcome, why are we doing data mesh? And the outcome is really that working with data products that you can then use across the organization. I prefer taking that perspective, like a top down, right?
Yeah. Well, as Thoughtworks, we sort of invented the paradigm, so didn't mention it here for a reason, and it's basically the same as you said, that many times for us, the client might come with an idea that, hey, we want a data mesh. Can you sell us one?
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
I'll take two.
yeah, 2 meters of that.
Yeah.
So but how we want to take it is sort of coming from the up, and sort of think about the actual problems to be solved first, and then see like which sort of flavor of that sort of paradigm is suitable for the
But
customer.
okay, you did mention one tool, and I'm thinking about it now because it says components, capabilities, and tools. We should be talking about that. You said the catalog. What tools are there? Because everybody's just really excited about saying, it's about culture and this and that. But there are some tools that make life easier, if nothing else. What tools would they be?
Well, if I can start and you guys can then pitch in, so obviously gonna mention some of your competitors here also, but we've seen companies using Alation, for example, for the catalog, or Calibra. Then if you're heavy in the Azure, you might use the Purview that they have there. Then we've had a number of successes with sort of a Snowflake ecosystem, whatever there's available. So it's not so. How should I say? There's a lot of catalogs, for example, available.
Yeah.
But to make it sort of fit the decentralized paradigm, I think the most important things are that it's how should I say? The API connectivity, the sort of rich meta model, where you can model your data products there easily. Those are one of the sort of key components.
But okay, you can spin off this one because I love this. I love the fact that people are like, it's not about technology. But stuff does make a difference. And the point of technology is to support us in specific ways of working. And so if there is a data catalog that supports some of those features that, are paradigms that we think are the right way of handling a decentralized data culture, or whatever we want to call it, what such features do you think are significant, or capabilities, or?
So one of the most important things in my perspective is something that gives you lineage across all technologies. So understanding where data is coming from, where it's going, and what kind of transformation has it gone under during that. That is one of the important things when we talk about governance, that is lineage. Another thing is around security as well, as mentioned before, where we also see partners that are focusing on the more securing data products and making sure that they're available. One of the things that I see more and more that maybe some of, no offense, but to Alation and Colibra and these kind of data catalog tools are struggling a bit with is maybe more the part around enforcing data contracts and policies around data contracts, because that's still an area in strong development, like the data contracts, right? We don't see a tool that goes out and says, we're a data contract tool. There are some that are beginning to emerge, and we see it at our customers, but they're not, we don't see them that heavily yet.
I love this. You are the first person to say, I don't agree, or something in this panel, probably in the many years that I've been here. Tell me about data contracts. What's up?
So I'd say more than, just building off both what you said, yes, you need a data catalog, but you need a data intelligence platform. And that's just so much more than a data catalog. Yeah. Yes, you need the nuts and bolts to ingest data, know where it is, know what they are, but then you want to wrap around the governance controls around that with your contracts of how you're consuming data, who can consume it, adding on to that the lineage, so understanding how data is flowing, but if you're talking about business lineage, then being able to build on top of the fact of, well, how are my classification flags flowing through, which gets really important when you're talking about AI, because once you have data into your AI, you've lost context of quality and classification, etc. As you're saying, the APIs so that you can absolutely integrate any external data quality provider. And then finally having that collaboration. So it's not just that you've got a catalog that sits in the corner and people have to go into and find their card and find their bit of data. It's, well, I work in Slack and Teams. Well, I just want to be able to go in Slack and Teams and find my data. So that's where that data intelligence platform added on to data maturity. So having a good data culture maturity model, thinking those through, that's where you get to.
Let's simplify here. So for the audience, I think many are familiar with data catalogs because so many products have them. But you mentioned a couple of other things. Are there simple words we can use for those additional? I like using the word capability in general because it's not a technology thing. It's like what can you do with the tool? What are other capabilities than data catalog that you think are important to a modern data strategy?
Right, so the basic data catalog is, I need to ingest data, I need to find it. So you've got that discovery built in.
Discoverability.
What then builds on very quickly from that is around data governance or AI governance. So when you're adding around those themes around either data quality or data classification, all of those aspects, along with lineage, that gives you a much more holistic sense of your overall data governance position within the business, which then gives you the confidence that what you have in there is appropriate to use in AI model.
Are we just talking about logging, like logging how the data is used so that we can make sort of check, well, maybe even enforce, but at the very least understand how the data, if the data is being used as intended?
Yeah, but I would say that's a little bit more than just logging. I mean, you need to have all of those connections in some form of graph put together so that you know how all these things are layered on top of each other with a lot of different parts of the business working on it to understand that. If you just had an Excel spreadsheet with all of your data list and some kind of data library, that is not going to give you those capabilities.
Right. Okay, so logging is the pejorative term to describe something very sophisticated.
Auditing is a better word, yeah.
Auditing,
I know.
right. And in your experience, I mean, one of the things that I'm not a big fan of platforms like Snowflake and others, because one of the things that's fun for me about technology is when stuff goes very quickly, and when you're on one platform, that's the one you have to work with. So, you know, if something goes a little bit faster in one domain, if you're managing everything yourself, you can run at that speed, but then comes the overhead cost of you having to manage everything. So it's like the pros and cons, right? But with regards to sort of all the additional tools around data governance, what approach is practically most successful in the customers that you're working with? Are we talking about one tool to do it all, lineage, enforcement, data catalog, all that kind of stuff? Or do you find that people is good to sort of take it piecemeal, maybe start with just the catalog, start building the literacy? What works in practice?
Well, I guess it depends on the sort of where you are at as a like on your data journey, so to say. But let's say that when we start with a company to do a sort of let's call it data mesh transformation. So it's like the organizational, the technological side of things. So I think the data catalog is one of the sort of central pieces there, and we usually start building in a sort of thin slice way that we choose a few use cases where we want to sort of build that platform infrastructure by building that use case, and then sort of build on top of that after that one. So I would say that you shouldn't sort of lock everything like technology-wise in the beginning, but sort of keep it open for a while things.
But are you saying then that you don't have to do it all at the same time in parallel? You can start with one piece at a time, or because what I want you guys to clarify is, if you do one piece at a time, is there even value in that, or do you have to have the whole cake in order for it to provide the value that's expected from this kind of an approach to data management?
I completely agree with Jussi that take it a piece at a time, so use case by use case. That's how you build it out.
Okay, so the infrastructure that supports the use case.
In the terms of technology, I completely agree with you. There's no good in coming and doing like an end-to-end suite that you just go with one provider. I'm a big fan of the best of breed, right? I think if you do the best of breed and each use case can choose its own technology within some limits, of course, otherwise it becomes a nightmare to manage, then you're on a good path, right?
If you want to do something like data lineage and you want to have like a couple of providers because you like the various things they have, is that still possible to do?
Yeah, absolutely. And we see customers doing that. They're having kind of maybe 2-3 tools, platforms, whatever you want to call them, as their standard go-to. What we see works really well is when when the centralized team, the federation team, or whatever you want to call them, they build a set of guidelines, principles that you follow. If you follow them, it's easier for you. That means you have like 2-3 technologies. That doesn't mean you cannot choose another technology, but it just becomes harder for you to get it, a data product published in the catalog. Those kind of the things.
I mean, what's your experience with like multi-vendor setups where customers, either maybe it's because they have legacy, right, and you just have to relate to that, or because they actually want to have, I really like this product, but I also want to use you guys for this the major part of the way I handle data. Does that work? Does that make things more difficult?
No, I think most platforms these days are built on a open, extensible platform to be able to do those things. So if you're not able to do that, if you've got more of a closed environment, then it's going to be harder because you are talking about something bigger. I think with data teams, what they need to be looking at is recognizing that data is not necessarily the be-all end-all of the organization. What are the organizational objectives? What are therefore the biggest pain points? And therefore, as you were saying, well, let's pick and choose the early wins, but ensuring that we can integrate along the line. So having integration with many platforms has to be the way forward.
Yeah, I guess the sort of integration capabilities of different products at the moment is like the core for this to work.
Yeah.
Okay. What would you say, I asked about data mesh, because I think maybe if not last year, at the most 2 years ago, it was the only word people would talk about. And I feel like it's sort of subsumed into what we're talking about here, so we don't have to use the word data mesh. But I guess at the time the concept was quite, I don't know, I don't want to say revolutionary, but
Different.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a new way of looking at data, right? Of working with
Yeah,
data.
maybe.
It was not new in the application space, in the operational plane, but in the analytical plane, it became a big thing, right?
Yeah.
Because it is a different way of thinking around data.
Right. What is the equivalent now then? I mean, what is the
hype?
frontier? No, forget the hype. Everybody's like, we're gonna bash the hype."
AI, yeah.
No, but like, if we're talking about the frontier of what can be done, what are the coolest companies doing, and what is the frontier of data management and sort of the neat way to do things to enable cool use cases that wouldn't have been able otherwise, or maybe levels of efficiency that are just really high. I don't know. What is the frontier?
That's why I think that data mesh conversation has evolved into stage products. And data teams have recognized that they do have some consumers that want to consume some data, but a data product being an abstraction of some underlying data assets that they need to describe in a way that me coming along wanting to, and let's face it, I'm not coming to work going, oh, I want to find some data. I want to find information. So the data product is going, this is the information I can do to allow me to do my job better. So data teams are having to work a bit more about being more customer facing and therefore
it is a data product thinking, right?
Yeah.
So that you're applying a product development thinking to the data, which you didn't have before.
Yeah.
You didn't have the responsibility around version control of the data. You didn't have the responsibility of keeping customers happy. You just delivered it like a data set, and and that's for me is a big change in the data products and makes it more interesting for consumers that they have these new data products coming
That's
out.
what I've actually told to a number of people today when, well, they've approached our booth and with the data mesh in mind or some questions around that, and with a few guys we talked about like what's left of the data mesh, so to say, or what do you, like if you're a smaller player, for example, what would you recommend for us to sort of take from the data mesh? And I say that it's the sort of product thinking around your data. That's the biggest benefit, even if you're a smaller company.
But okay, this is awesome. Let's talk about product for a second, because in some of the earlier panels, we were talking about having an AI product manager. Like if you deploy a model, you have a life cycle, But for me, that's an entrepreneur. The balance sheet of the company is a very big thing. That's really how I justify. And we're very eager to save value, not always very eager to do the work to quantify the value in real economic terms or other things, right? We're satisfied with people find it useful, and then we sort of leave it at that. But if we're going to treat data like a product, first of all, I want to know what your experience is. Do people sort of rationalize the cost of maintaining data and think about it in terms of product life cycle in order to justify further investments, the running cost, the cost of technical debt, and all that kind of stuff? Is that something you see regularly? Is that something you suggest? What's your experience with that?
If I can start, and then let's build on that. So to be honest, I think we rarely see that. It's sort of the most evolved data operations that think about their data products on that level, that like the sort of cost side, or how do you upkeep it, maintain it, how much it costs. So I think.
Is that a limitation of the tooling or of the maturity entrepreneurship?
I think it's like the maturity thing.
Yeah.
Like in a large organizations, it's the sort of entrepreneurial thinking might be lacking really in those environments. They don't encourage it many times. So.
I think it goes back to the C-level I mentioned before, that if they don't ask for that visualization of that value, nobody's going to really make it up on their own. Of course, there are some people who do understand that we need to show the value, because that's also going to justify the investments that they're going to make if they need new technology, more people, those kind of things. And it's a question of having the right KPIs, but I don't see companies having that high level of maturity.
The reason I think this is relevant...
I would just say that the thing that we see quite a lot is actually more of a defensive action. So everyone recognizes, or they're saying, well, right, we've got to create an ML model. We want to let this loose on 10 million of our customers. So the defensive action is more about, Is it compliant? Are we going to do anything bad here? Are we really sure that we've got the accuracy, we've got AI ethics in play, we're looking at the EU AI Act, whatever. But I think the interesting thing where things are coming a little bit full circle, I mean, we skipped quite quickly over search and discovery, and going, well, yeah, everyone does that, it's really easy now. Actually, with the advent of more data science, more AI modeling, that's actually coming back into vogue, because it's like the data scientists are finding more esoteric bits of data they can find, knowing that they can use it, and therefore, well, we need to be able to catalog more of those bits of data. So actually that's coming into play much more now.
Yeah, it's like one of the best benefits of taking a kind of a data product mindset into your data management is just that you think about, for example, your users, internal users, data scientists, what do they actually need to know about the data to be sure.
Totally, but even on the value question, I mean, I think traditionally a lot of ML models were around kind of marketing activities, and marketing teams have got really good, strong KPIs and key results around what they want to achieve out of any marketing campaign. So when you're starting to ask the question of why, that's where that value question comes in.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, because to you two, it's around data products. If you take a normal product like an iPhone, then you have a product manager, somebody who owns the product, who is responsible of making sure the customers are happy, everything is working fine, and their bonus, their incentives are tied up to the success of that product.
Yeah.
Do you see that in with data products happening also? Because I think that could be an interesting thing if you have the proper indicators around data product, that actually the product owner also their bonus, their monetary.
So I think you used the word there that I would catch on to. So I always differentiate between a product manager and a product owner.
Yeah, true.
So
that's two different things.
So I think in the industry we're starting to see data product owners, and I think data product owners are a little bit more internally facing. So they're a little bit more concerned with their engineering teams, how things are working. Clearly, they're a little bit outward facing about who their customer is, but they're not necessarily like a product manager who is absolutely concerned about how much revenue is this generating.
Yeah.
What is the upside of splitting that role in a typical company?
So if you think about product management, there's a spectrum. From one side, it's very much engineering internally focused, which is a product owner, right the way through to the other end of the spectrum, which gets more into product marketing. But down that, you've got a kind of classic product manager. The advantage of the classic product manager is they have more of a holistic view of everything that's going on within that whole product journey. They're the voice of the customer, they understand what's going on, they're thinking about revenue. When you do have that kind of split, but then you generally do have something like an engineering manager within your organization as well that is much closer to that engineering perspective and therefore in the weeds of the code.
I feel like this is way more sophisticated. I mean, this is like us sitting here like doing Zen exercises, coming up with like the ultimate setup for something that it's not clear to me that it warrants that much complexity. Like, I understand conceptually why the logical division of responsibilities and stuff like that is there. I just don't know if the ROI is there. And the reason I asked about the balance sheet and the ROI stuff, or the entrepreneurship stuff, is because one of the things that these things typically stop on is when the tech people bring up the tech debt sign. You know, if you have a balance sheet, debt is not a problem as long as you know how the things are balanced.
How to quantify.
But tech debt seems to be a thing that people always bring up and say, no, we can't do this because we have to fix this other stuff first. So I was wondering sort of how people justify these projects moving forward, and having more roles obviously adds more cost and that kind of stuff. Okay, first of all, for the audience, I mean, is cost even a factor in getting this in place? Or is it really just an organizational thing?
Well,
if you need to hire 100 people to get it to work, then I suppose cost is an issue.
that would have been sort of my first thought, that of course, whenever we get to talk with clients about how should they implement their data management, like the underlying thing is about the cost, because it's in one way or the other the current setup is costly, and the new setup, it won't be cheap either. But maybe
because the current setup has a cost even if you don't know what it is.
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
sure.
But it needs to
and do you want it to work? Do you want it to work, or do you want it to work well?
Yeah. That would be my sort of that was where I was going, Jet. Like, you pay a lot of money for this thing that maybe doesn't work optimally.
Right.
So maybe it would be worth paying money for something that actually provides more
So let
value.
me tongue-in-cheek ask you back: is the point of setting things up this way, sort of it's hard to say it exactly right, decreased operational costs, or sort of added capabilities that allow you to do neat things, but it's going to cost you? You know what I mean?
I'd say it's efficient operation costs. So if you want to work efficiently, if you want to work at scale and speed, you are going to need a certain amount of people to make.
Is it going to cost you? That's what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's going to cost you, but you're going to gain abilities you didn't have before.
Right.
The value you get out of it is, I mean, the whole point of talking about decentralization or data mesh or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
is because the businesses, they're sitting around waiting for 6, 7, 8 months in a centralized structure with a monolith.
Right.
In order
They're
to do
sitting
the
and
use
waiting-
cases.
Exactly. So they're asking for a new data product or a new report or a new data set, and then they're waiting 6 months, and when you get the data set, it's like, well, it's too late now.
Yeah.
It's the question I was asking
already
6 months ago. They're not relevant. Exactly, they're not relevant anymore. So you need to look at the value. We're facing this from the Snowflake perspective all the time when we're talking about if we need to replace, like migrate some on-premise SQL Server to Snowflake, to the cloud. If you're just doing a one-to-one migration and the result is the same in the end and you have a huge cost in doing that, why do you want to do that?
Right.
Because you're getting more agility, you're getting more blah, 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 and then all come all the buzzwords, right? but
but
there
that-
needs to be a value at the end of
But
it.
then it seems to me that you can't really run this project without tying it to use cases that are generating value from the. You can't just treat it like an infrastructure project.
No.
Is that right?
That's
Yeah,
a mistake.
definitely.
Everybody here nods to that one.
Right.
And then do we also all agree on that it's possible to start this the MVP way so that you don't have to have the whole platform? You start it with that use case and then build the pieces that are required for that use case. Is that
Yeah.
also
We have that as
something
an
we all
official
agree?
recommendation.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. As long as you're emphasizing the V, not the M.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a viable product.
Not
Yeah,
just
yeah.
a small useless product.
Right.
Small use of-
I see lots of those. No, those ones are easy to come up
Yeah,
with.
yeah. But and of course, it's easy to say here that hey, do it that way.
Yeah.
And then, but actually, of course, when you start the journey in the beginning, you might have to put a bit more effort in building those central pieces like the data catalog and all the practices around it. And you need storage, you need compute that you can sort of distribute to the teams. You need to sort of set up something in the beginning, and that's going to be a bit of an investment, but it's not like a full-fledged managed platform that
Right.
serves every use case. You need
Yeah.
to sort of confine it a bit. Yeah.
And
Okay.
you need to qualify it first also what are must-haves
Yeah.
and what are nice-to-haves in the beginning, right? So focus on the must-haves to get started.
That's fair.
That's pretty straightforward. Yeah.
I asked the question before that I think we sort of pinned and moved sideways from, but I want to know what's at the frontier of data management. And so that means, the people that are the best of the best, what are they doing now? I think I heard something about relating to discoverability, maybe something in that direction. What do you think is at the frontier of data management right now?
So, I mean, obviously the buzzword right now is AI. So AI is at the frontier, but it's how do we do AI well? And it comes back to the point I think we've already discussed a few times, which is you need really good data governance. You really need really good, which becomes AI governance again because of this abstraction problem between the data you started off with, what your model is. So that's at the frontier of what's going on. But also with data scientists who are now starting to talk to the data team saying, I need all of these data, what do you got? So it's expanding that entire data estate and being able to catalog it in a meaningful way.
Yeah, what's difficult is explainability around AI, right? So
Yeah.
how are you actually getting to the result? How are you making sure that this is something that you can explain later on? Because that's requirement from the regulatory bodies, right?
Yeah. But like what we are seeing in, let's say, the frontier of the strategy space at the moment is that, like before, people might come and ask that, hey, we need help with the data strategy. But now the sort of driving force is that, hey, we need help with the data strategy because we need to be ready for AI. We need to be able to deploy it. We need to be sure about we use it responsibly. So it actually becomes this kind of a data and
But how
AI
long is that
strategy.
project? I mean, I can imagine people saying, oh shit, we need to get our data in order to be able to take advantage of this new AI thing happening. But it can't be like a 3-year project.
Well, if you talk about only the sort of strategy side of it, it's like in months, I would say.
Okay, okay.
But then, of course, you need to execute on the strategy.
Right.
And you don't want to have the 3-year project.
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
have small chunks, as we talked before. Yeah.
And we have customers who are building chatbots, right, based on using RAG and LLMs, so that you can actually ask it questions around things that are happening now, right? But the difficult thing is, again, make sure that you get a right answer. How do you control such a chatbot to make sure that it doesn't recommend your competition or something like that, right? That's a difficult part, right?
Yeah, and just to speed up that process, you're saying it can't take 3 years, totally agree. So, for example, things that Alation is doing is making sure that we can speed up that whole curation process by using AI to do auto-curation, whether that be stewards or descriptions, whatever, so that when then you're using concepts such as semantic search, you're getting better results, and therefore that discovery phase just becomes faster and easier.
Yeah.
What about
one thing also sort of where AI is helping at the moment? I've seen companies who use AI to do the data modeling,
Right.
sort of help with that.
Yep.
So
You're talking about like data extraction, or
no, I mean basically like, for example, conceptual modeling of the data.
oh,
So that you get the right, like, how do you build your data products? What data do you have?
Yep.
And
Like a
before it was like a
recommendation.
really sort of a manual process. You need data architects to, draw the.
So that's really using inference on your so
Yeah,
almost
basically.
almost creating kind of synthetic lineage through inference and using
Yeah,
AI.
yeah.
Yeah.
that sounds like forefront of data management to me. If that's what we can do today, even if it's rudimentary, that's definitely what's going to be a standard tomorrow. And I think it's worthwhile getting into the mindset and getting prepared for it and starting to experiment now and making mistakes so you don't make mistakes in the future. Make them now.
Yeah, learning
Yeah.
as you go, right?
Yeah. All right. I think that's all we have time for today. But I think this panel is very good. I think you all are authorities in the field of data management. So if the audience is looking to get started on their, whether they want to call it a data mesh journey or just a data management journey, get in
Data
touch with
products.
these great panelists. And thank you for joining us on this session. We'll be back in just a moment. And thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you.